Joining me now on set, NFL analyst Lige Douzable. And let's first target one of those storylines, thanks to Joe Musso there, and that is the Tua Tagovailoa against Justin Herbert battle, forever linked, of course, in the class of 2020, who should have been taken first. Dolphins ended up with that selection, and the Chargers feeling just fine with the guy that they got. When you take a look at this matchup again, for a long time it was Tua not living up to his hype, but this year he is. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up, right, Tommy, because these two will be tied together because of the 2020 draft class. I mean, Miami Dolphin fans were talking about tank for Tua. And after 2 years, they didn't know if he was actually the guy. Meanwhile, they saw Justin Herbert go out there and throw for more yards than any quarterback has in the first 2 years in league history. Well, now it's funny how winning kind of changes things, right? Now they think they have their guy in Tua Tagovailoa. And again, these two will always be connected to each other because one fan base wanted one guy, the other fan base wanted the other guy. And if you look at these two guys, right? Last week, Tommy, they were under heavy duress. Like Tua, that was one of his first games playing a top-tier defense. Right now, it started off amazing, right? 75-yard touchdown pass to Trent Sherfield, but then that 49ers defense settled in. They got after him. Tua sailed some passes, threw some passes behind some receivers. Tyreek Hill, he threw one behind him, ended up being picked off. Then he also got sacked and fumbled the ball and then went for a touchdown. On the other side, Justin Herbert actually had a pretty good game. He threw for over 300 yards, but he was under duress. Tommy, the first drop-back pass, sack fumble by Max Crosby. His offensive line has been scattered, right? There's been so many guys rotating in the offensive line. Hopefully this week it looks like he may get Mike Williams and Corey Linsley back, the Pro Bowl center. So that'll be a big help for him. But this Chargers team has just not been able to finish. But the biggest thing is they've had so many injuries. 46 snaps between Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field, which is egregious. Everybody's talking about, well, Herbert's had all these weapons. Well, this year he hasn't had that, and he's still giving his team a chance to win. So these two teams will look to bounce back after both of their quarterbacks were under heavy duress last week.
Before we get to your selection on the game against the spread, talking about that clash of 20, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and to be determined still, Jordan Love. Every few years we get a clash like this. 2018 was a big clash. The one with Rivers, Manning, and Roethlisberger was big in the mid-2000s. And then, of course, 1983, everyone knows, with Marino, Kelly, and Elway. What do you make of this particular group a few years now removed in the NFL?
Yeah, this is a very special group. I mean, everybody has a winning record except for Justin Herbert. And that's not his fault, right? He can't play defense. He for sure can't play run defense. And he can't coach the team when his head coach decides to be too aggressive and not kick field goals and go for it on fourth down. But this is a special class, right? Jalen Hurts, a lot of people wondered, could he take that next step? To me, he's the front runner this year in the MVP. Joe Burrow showed you what he could do just in year two, taking this team to the Super Bowl. And they look like one of the hottest teams coming down the stretch. I mean, big win last week versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, will learn something about them when they face off this Sunday. But both of these guys have played at a high level as well. So this is a special quarterback class.
Dolphins are laying 3.5 at SoFi. They continue their West Coast roadie. Who are you going with?
I'm going to take the Chargers to cover. I mean, if you look at this, right, the Chargers do struggle on defense, and more specifically run defense. But the Dolphins don't routinely run the ball. So if I'm Mike McDaniel, it's not about Tua having a bounce-back game. It's about running the football. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, they should be big this week. This Chargers defense, they're giving up 150 rush yards per game, and they're giving up 5.5 yards per carry. So if I'm the Dolphins, everybody's been able to run the ball on them. Josh Jacobs had a field day last week. Let's try to get this run game going. Take some pressure off Tua Tagovailoa because that helps in the RPO game, that run-pass option that they have. We saw that on the first play of the game last week versus the 49ers. Fred Warner just takes half a step up. Trent Sherfield gets behind him, then a bad angle by the safety, explosive play. So that RPO game, it will help if you're able to run the football.
So you're back in the bolts there, catching the points. It's an interesting stretch for Miami. Again, they had the West Coast game against San Francisco. They have this West Coast game, and then they have a short week on a Saturday night, and they're battling with the Buffalo Bills atop the AFC East Division. The Bills have a rematch with your Jets, which last time they played at the Meadowlands, we all thought, man, could the Jets even cover? And yet they came out with a 20-17 win. This time around, Mike White, who wasn't even featured in our piece there earlier, now is in the fold, but the Bills do not have Von Miller, not only on IR, but done for the year. So how do they get to Mike White this time?
Yeah, that's going to be the question in this game. How do they affect Mike White? And if you look at the Bills, they generally don't blitz. But last week we saw a change in that for Leslie Frazier. Now, I'm not sure if that's because they didn't have their closer Von Miller or because the Patriots offense has struggled and they felt like they matched up really well on the outside with their receivers. But last week versus Mac Jones, they pressured him nearly 40% of the time, which is a high number for a Leslie Frazier defense. If you look at Mike White this year, right, he's only been pressured 18% of his dropbacks. And in those situations, he's completing a little bit over 50% of his passes with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Tommy, this young kid reads defenses so quick. He gets off of the first read, the second read. And when that back foot hits, he lets go of the ball. As a defensive lineman, you get frustrated playing a guy like Mike White because he lets the ball go within 2.47 seconds. That's the average of when he lets the ball go. So you get frustrated, but you have to continue to rush. It'll be interesting, right? Because we'll see, like last time they played, Jordan Poyer didn't play. And I believe the Bills are undefeated when he's in the lineup. Matt Milano missed practice yesterday, which is a cause for concern because they had that short week last week. So they've had extra days to rest. He didn't play in that game last time either. So if they don't have Matt Milano, I think that's a big boost for the Jets offense because he's been playing at a Pro Bowl level. But Jordan Poyer being back in the lineup is massive. And so Tre'Davious White coming back is big for the Bills as well.
It's been a theme, by the way, for this Bills defense.
Yeah.
Do you have all your pieces? And
Right.
at times, all the guys that you mentioned have missed a little bit of time. All right, the line is 10. The Jets are catching 10 points, and they almost covered against Minnesota last week as well. To the surprise of no one, you're back in the Jets.
10 points?
Yeah.
Did people not see this game the first time they played 10 points? I mean, granted, I get it. The Bills, like, they're catching real momentum. But Deion Dawkins, right? Now, he did practice earlier this week. We'll see if he can go. Because last time, this Jets defensive line got after Josh Allen. 5 sacks and 8 quarterback hits. I think 10 points is a egregious line. This is a divisional game. Granted, I know the Bills are, getting hot at the right time. They're getting some of their pieces back on defense. But Mike White in this offense, it's not like it was before when Zach Wilson was the quarterback. It wasn't like they were playing scared. They're opening up the playbook for Mike White. And let's not forget, right, he gets to really fight some of those demons because the last time he played the Bills, 4 interceptions. So I know he's excited and looking forward to getting back in this game. I like the Jets to cover the 10 points.
All right, you're going with the Jets to cover that number. Let's go back to the West Coast and talk about the San Francisco 49ers, where all the news, of course, Trey Lance was out for the year early in the season, then comes in backup quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, then he breaks his ankle/foot. He's done potentially for the year, but in the immediate time, it's third string, Mr. Irrelevant, now relevant,
Right.
Brock Purdy. So they're saying all the right things in San Francisco. They're taking on this Bucs defense. If you're Todd Bowles and company, how do you now attack a rookie quarterback from Iowa State there in Brock Purdy?
Yeah, you got to give him different looks. And the thing is, I like Brock Purdy. He plays with a little bit of swagger and confidence out on that field. You heard him in the press conference like, I was ready for this. Each week I was preparing to be the guy. Let's put this into perspective, Tommy. Let's not forget, going into training camp, they signed Nate Sudfeld to be the number 2 quarterback. Gave him guaranteed money. But Brock Purdy showed so well during training camp that they were like, we're going to release him even though we gave him some guaranteed money. That's all you need to know. Kyle Shanahan, again, the San Francisco 49ers, they're not based off of what the quarterback can do. It's all about the scheme, right? You have to just live within the scheme and know where to go with the football. Now, you can't turn the ball over, and Brock Purdy had one pad pass, targeting Brandon Ayuk on the outside on a back shoulder fade. He threw it inside, and Xavier Howard made him pay for it. But I really like how Kyle Shanahan schemed things up to get Christian McCaffrey open. But Brock Purdy made some big throws in that game, especially in the second half when it seemed like Miami was trying to get some momentum. That third down catch down the seam to George Kittle, that was a thing of beauty by Brock Purdy. So if you look at it, Tom Brady has had a really good record against guys making their start against him. I believe he's undefeated 6-0. I don't know if that happens this week because I don't know if any of those quarterbacks that Tom Brady played before had the San Francisco 49ers defense. And when you look at this, the one matchup I want to see, Donovan Smith versus Nick Bosa. I mean, Donovan Smith has 71 penalties since coming into the league, 25 holding penalties since 2018, which is number 1 in the NFL. We saw it last week. They scored a touchdown with Chris Godwin down the seam, right, to take the lead. He holds Marcus Davenport, which could have potentially ruined the game for him. Now, Tom Brady, of course, is the GOAT. He found a way to find Rachaad White for a touchdown, and they win that game. But Nick Bosa, right, we talked about Tua earlier in this show and him struggling. Nick Bosa was the reason why. 3 sacks in that game and a sack fumble that turned into a touchdown. I'm looking forward to this matchup. If you're Todd Bowles and you're Byron Leftwich, you better keep it back to Nick Bosa's side. He's number 1 in the NFL in quarterback hits and sacks right now. He will get after you and he will wreck the game for you. So that is one of the matchups I'm looking for because this Bucs offensive line has struggled throughout the year, more specifically Donovan Smith.
No Tristan Wirfs, Ryan Jensen, Ali Marpet retired. And again, it sounds like you're leaning or really liking San Francisco in this spot, 3.5.
I am. I like San Francisco at home, 3.5. Young quarterback playing the GOAT, but he's going to be a little bit more comfortable because he's at home. You saw how comfortable he was last week versus the Miami Dolphins, coming off the bench and playing that game. Now he has the whole week of preparation to really get into this game. I think Todd Bowles will switch some things up. He routinely blitzes, but the thing is you have to be worried, right? Because they call the San Francisco 49ers pass catchers the Yak brothers, right? George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel. If you go man coverage and one of those guys slip off Deebo Samuel, it's an explosive touchdown. So you have to be careful when you pick and choose to blitz Brock Purdy and give him different looks. I like the San Francisco 49ers at home because I like the bravado of Brock Purdy, but more importantly, I like the inventiveness of Kyle Shanahan in the offense and that number 1 defense in the NFL.
It'll be interesting to see how Brock Purdy performs. Coming in an emergency spot is different than having a team be able to prepare for you from week to week. So look out for that. Let's look out for a matchup there in the NFC North where we have the 10-win Vikings against the Lions, which we know defensively have had some issues, although they shored up a few things. But the question then becomes, can Minnesota maybe take advantage of still what is probably a liability run defense-wise with Detroit? Yeah,
Detroit struggles in stopping the run. Now, they played a little bit better on defense the last few weeks, but that is the one area they struggle. If you look at last week, versus Jacksonville Jaguars, Travis Etienne was having a really good game, averaged nearly 4.5 yards a carry. But they were down 30-6 going into the second half. So the run game kind of becomes null and void. I really like what head coach Kevin O'Connell from the Minnesota Vikings did versus the Jets last week, right? Routinely, that's a passing team. But they say, you know what? They have a defensive line that can get after you. Let's run the ball downhill at them. Dalvin Cook had a really good game. He averaged almost 4.5 yards a carry versus Jets. And also the backup, Alexander Madison, he averaged over 4.5 yards a carry in that game versus Jets. And they both had rushing touchdowns in the red zone. So I would like to see them stick with the run. Even though I know they're a pass-happy team, when they can get Dalvin Cook going, let's not forget that game when they made that comeback versus the Buffalo Bills, it was aided by the run game. Dalvin Cook had that explosive run for like 60-plus yards and really got the run game going. That helped them get back into that game. So I want to see them take advantage of this, Detroit Lions run defense who has struggled. I believe they give up around 5.2 yards per carry. The other thing I'm going to look at, this Detroit Lions offense is explosive. I know, Tommy, that's weird to say, but this is an explosive offense. The last 4 games, they've averaged 30 points per game. I really like what offensive coordinator Ben Johnson does. He'll line up in 12 personnel, which is 1 back, 2 tight ends, and they'll run duo, which is 2 doubles on the defensive tackles and run it downhill. But then what they'll also do is they'll go spread and empty in that scenario, which makes you have to match what they're doing. So if you're in the press box and you're the defensive coordinator, you see 12 personnel, you're thinking they're going to run the ball, so you're going to put in an extra linebacker to stop the run. They spread you out, and you routinely go man in those situations. That's where Amon St. Brown comes big. That's where DJ Chalk comes big. And Jared Goff did a really good job being able to decipher when they were in man and zone coverage last week. He threw for over 340 yards, and Amon St. Brown had a really big day. So I really like what Ben Johnson does, switching things up, being inventive, but putting big personnel in, but making it seem like it's a 3 or 4 wide receiver set.
Lions are favored by 2. Are you taking the favorite or are you taking the dog?
First of all, are you surprised that the Lions are favored by 2 at 5-7?
Talked about lines because at Caesars Sportsbook, Minnesota opened up as a 3-point favorite, and it's gone all the way to the other side without any major injuries or storylines. I am surprised. I'm a little surprised at your pick, though. You're going Minnesota?
I'm going Minnesota. I think they covered it 2.5. I mean, again, the Lions are one of the hottest teams right now. You want to be playing your best football heading into December and January. They've won 4 out of the last 5. But this Minnesota team does a good job in one-score games. Like, I know a lot of people have kind of balked at them because they've won so many one-score games. But to me, that proves that you're battle-tested. They have a lot on the line this game, Tommy. They win this game. They win the NFC North, solidify their spot in the playoffs. I think they covered at 2.5. And honestly, I would sprinkle some money on the money line for the Vikings.
All right, going with Minnesota in this situation, 28-24 win for them.